the focus point that everyone is trying to find is, what am I good at that God could be honored with? Now, everything that we're good at can be tuned that way, but we need to be purposeful with that. Well, how do we do that? Well, we got to understand our Father's purpose, and that's very simply summed up as love God, love people, make disciples. And so
Yeah.
by that heading, our Father is like a grand hold corp, and I can hang my little LLC under his purpose. And so I can say, okay, I've got potential, I've got capabilities that you've given me. You've got a purpose I want to align to. And then the fuel for all of this is to find out, what is my heartbeat for, that God's heart beats for, that I just can't deny.
Thank you so much for checking out the show today. Look, I want you to stay connected with everything this guest has to offer. So make sure that you sign up for my weekly newsletter. I'm not here to spam you. I'm here to just send you all the behind the scenes videos, shorts, reels from this week's guest, plus some other bonuses on there. So make sure that you hit connect below this video in the description, or go to my website and sign up right there on the homepage, and I'll make sure that you stay in the loop. Thanks so much again. Have an awesome day. Keep changing the world. Jeff, you're a husband, you're a father, you're a speaker, writer, entrepreneur, coach, CEO of Priority Living, founder of Centix, and so much more, man. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Hey, Erik, it's great to be here with you.
I'm excited to get into your story, but I'd like to kick this off by going back a little bit. Like, where did you grow up? What was childhood like for you?
Well, I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio, so I'm a Buckeye by birth, but we quickly moved to Central Florida,
Okay.
where I grew up until high school. So most of my growing up days was in the Orlando area before I went to college.
I gotcha. That's awesome. I'm a Cleveland Indians fan. I'm having a hard time going to that Guardians thing, but yes.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
think everyone is, I can't help but say Indians after Cleveland.
right, totally. Like for us Christians, like I believe there's this moment in our lives where we're just like fully surrendered to Jesus. And it makes us an impact on
Yes.
our life there. For you, what was that moment like, and how did your life change after you decided to make that decision?
I was in church nearly all my life growing up. My
Okay.
mother had us there Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Tuesday night visitation, Sunday night. And on top of that, eventually she became the church secretary.
Oh
So I
wow.
had all sorts of reasons to be there. And so that was a surrounding of faith, but it wasn't until I was 12 years old. I was at a youth gathering on a Wednesday night,
Yeah.
and the interim youth pastor who had us there that evening, of course, the entree was pizza and games, but the Bible study that
Of
led
course.
to an invitation was the beginning of me saying yes to Jesus. So I was 12 then, and to be honest with you, I really didn't have a father in my spiritual life. My dad was present, but he wasn't a believer growing up.
Mhm. Wow.
And so in that time, Jesus and God was becoming a father. And then my youth pastor quickly became a father to me and had modeled, what does it look like to follow Christ? So that was the beginning of the journey for me back in Orlando at a youth gathering on a Wednesday night.
Wow. Come on, man. That's awesome. I love that. I gave my life to Christ when I was 24 years old, and I grew up in the church, like you said, but I was the kid who like snuck away to go to the bathroom and then just never came back. And for some reason, nobody ever went to look for me. Being there playing GI Joes, right? Like, back in the day. But I want to get into your priority living and the master's program that you have. This is so awesome. And for those who don't know, like, what's this about? How did all this come together?
Well, Priority Living was started in 1984 as a Bible study to businessmen in a bar room. And the
Wow.
way that that worked was that back in that time in Orange County, California, the founder of Priority Living, Bob Shank, said, businessmen need to hear a message about the Bible, about business. And in that time, that was pretty very forward thinking.
Yeah.
And so what the idea was is, hey, these bar rooms, or a bar room here in Orange County that's not used on a Monday morning, we can bring businessmen into this place. We can do a Bible study that's specifically about the marketplace and give them an encouragement to grow and lead like Christ in their business through the week. So as that started to flourish, priority living was creating a intellectual property base, so to speak, or a set of studies and things that were growing over time. And it was in the early 90s that Bob Shank became friends with the author of a book called Halftime. His name's Bob Buford. He's a now past to eternity saint who loved the marketplace and was always thinking of entrepreneurial ways
Wow.
to take the platform of a business and bring the gospel to the world. And so, as Bob Buford and Bob Shank were collaborating on an idea that said, "Hey, I wrote this book called Halftime. I really don't know how to help people implement this. Why don't you, Bob Shank, write a program that would create a coaching path to help to get that synthesis of how do I integrate my life?" Here's the problem statement, Erik, that most people are dealing with. It's that I have to live a siloed life. I'll live my career life now. I'll put that hat on. I'll put that aside. I'll put on my dad or my family hat and act in that role. And then I'll gather my family up and get them to church on Sunday. And hopefully, between my giving and the youth pastor, their mother, their teacher, they're going to get some sort of spiritual foundation. And I've got these siloed lives. And if I've had success in business, that means I can write bigger checks and do bigger vacations.
Yeah.
And so that sort of setup is the American cultural norm.
Mm.
Well, the master's program was formed in 1997 under Priority Living, and that program launched as a way with which to help guys synthesize an integrated life that would
Yeah.
say you could leverage your success from your business, but what you need to learn is how to make it serve you, not you serve it. And as you continue to get margin out of that business, not just in money, but the most precious commodity we have, time,
Time.
take that
Yeah.
time margin and use that to be incredible in your family, be extraordinary, be an excellent husband, be an incredible dad, and multiply that faithfulness so that there's fruitfulness inside of that, and see that God will eventually invite you into what he's already doing and bring the best of you, the things that you've honed in business, the faithfulness that you've brought in your family, that he'll invite you on an adventure to use your specific capabilities to
Mm.
further his agenda. So that's what the master's program is and how that all came out of Priority Living back now 40 years ago.
Come on. Man, meeting up in a bar room for this type of thing. What a cool thing, man. What a cool testimony that that brings. And man, I think there's a lot of leaders in today's world, especially newer leaders, that they kind of get lost in the beginning. Like, how do I do this? Like, especially faith-driven leaders. Like, how do you
Right.
help those leaders identify their God-given calling as they're coming to talk with you?
Well, the focus point that everyone is trying to find is what am I good at
Mm.
that God could be honored with? Now, everything that we're good at can be tuned that way, but we need to be purposeful with that. Well, how do we do that? Well, we got to understand our Father's purpose. And that's very simply summed up as love God, love people, make disciples.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
by that heading, our father is like a grand hold corp, and I can hang my little LLC under his purpose. And so I can say, okay, I've got potential, I've got capabilities that you've given me. You've got a purpose I want to align to. And then the fuel for all of this is to find out what is my heartbeat for that God's heart beats for
Mm.
that I just can't deny. For me, the beginning of that was the Middle East. I love the persecuted church in the Middle East. I don't know
Wow.
why. It was just a moment with which I discovered that was what I was passionate about. And
Mm.
so finding what you care about, what God put inside of you there, what capabilities you've been able to leverage, and that includes not only your skills, but what about your story, the platform, your relationships, your assets, bringing all those two things together into a potential, and then harnessing God's purpose. When we find the center of that Venn diagram, so to speak, we find the focus of what God has made us for.
Yeah. Come on. Man, that's so good. So good. Now, as I was looking through your website, kind of along those lines, you offer this free life mastery master class where you cover a ton of stuff. But when folks go through that master class, what's the journey that you're taking them on?
Well, the masterclass is really to say that you need a platform for your life.
Mm.
And how grand of a calling, how grand do you want your life to be? How extraordinary do you want to be able to see it become? Well, if you're thinking about a building like the Burj Khalifa, a gigantic building in the UAE, right? One of the
Yeah.
world's biggest buildings. Well, for that building to stand, it has to have an incredible foundation. And so life mastery is the beginning of the journey, is to say that I want to continue to pour into the foundation because my ambition for what God's made me for is to see that be as grand as it can be.
Mm.
So I need to start within myself. And starting within myself is to understand that by my body, this bag of water that God gave me, it has to persevere. It's got to have energy and vitality long into my life. How many years will I have? I don't know, but for whatever years I've got, I want to be vital, engaged, and be able to have an energy that's bringing it still late in life. So body, then mind.
Yeah.
My wisdom base is variable. And I can continue to build that wisdom base, or I can give up and say, I've learned enough. But
Mm.
what if I'm continuing to build that mindset so that as I grow that, I'm able to do things faster and continue to crystallize the intelligence? That's what building your mind is. Then your soul is your relationships. And
Wow.
when we're talking about relationships, Erik, what we're really discussing is how much I care for people. How
Mhm.
well do they know that I'm thinking about them? I'm thinking about them before I'm thinking about myself. And the soul is the care and experience with which people can feel my love for them here on this planet. This is the essential of how to win friends and influence people in
Yeah.
the soul basis. And then my spirit, the most important part of me now being alive in Christ, that is this vertical relationship that I want to grow, the walking with him every day, the being on adventure with him and getting my inputs from him. So this is my power core. And that's what
Mm.
we start with Life Masteries to say, I can't give what I don't have. And so inside of me, the more that I've built that core, it becomes an overflow with which I can offer to my marriage, to my
Mm.
children, to my career, to my finances. How do I make those things receive the best that God has inside of me to them? Well, then I start to build those four areas up. And these are the roles that I've got. Some of those roles I chose. Some of those roles may have surprised me, perhaps the size of my finances or how many children I have. But nonetheless, the roles that I've got, I'm either a steward, a professional, a father, a husband. Those roles then are these things that I'm committed to. So, how do I build into them intentionally so that they're growing?
Yeah.
And then the opportunity in life mastery is to see that I have the ability to serve Christ's body and the world that doesn't know him. But we start from the inside out. And life mastery says that platform of my life is to start inside of me and grow these things and believe that I will never stop learning, I will never stop working, and I will never stop playing as I develop those for the rest of my life.
Man, I was getting chills on the back of my neck as you were going through that, man. It's so good, dude. I think it's so important for us to have that in play as husbands, as dads, as
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, as we're doing this, and everything and trying to put all those hats on at once. I think, at least for me, I felt like over the years, there's been moments where I've just felt extremely burnt out and I couldn't do all of them. Like, what spiritual disciplines and habits do you put into play to ensure that you don't get burnt out so that you can be fully present with your family when you're there and fully present when your business, conversations are happening?
Well, an early book that I discovered was a book by a guy by the name of Dr. Henry Cloud. He wrote a book called Boundaries, and Boundaries is a good sort of starter to this concept. And the concept that I like to use is the tools of NE. Those tools are negate, negotiate, and neglect. Now, when I start talking to professionals about negating and negotiating, they can kind of get them, but when I talk about neglect, I often make people uncomfortable. So let me quickly explain. Those three areas create an ability for me to prevent burnout. And some of it includes the beginning, which is to negate. Erik, oftentimes in our professional lives, we have imagined that we're committed to things or we've self imposed commitments that are not true, that someone never said, I must, or even God didn't say, thou shalt. So
Yeah.
we create those constructs. And I need to negate those constructs that I can say, hang on, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Is it a part of my mission? And must I do it? Or is there someone else that I could give it to? So negating agreements that I've got that are just no longer valid or never were valid are the important thing, especially for high performing people. High performing people often struggle with not taking on more because they think their shoulders are so broad. I
Yeah.
can give me more, give me more, give me more. So negate, then negotiate. Oftentimes, when we get into these situations where things are not working in a win-win scenario, all we need to do is go back to those with whom we've got agreements, or even with those that we love, and start to say, hey, this isn't working in a balanced scenario and I'm failing because of it. Let's negotiate a situation where you can continue to thrive and I'll thrive
Mhm.
going forward. So negotiating is a key tool, but the last one that I told you about is neglect. Now neglect is one with which we often have to benignly neglect something that's going to go away. The simplest example is, how many emails in your email box right now could you just not respond to, even pretend you didn't receive,
Yeah.
and allow them to wither on the vine?
Mhm.
Now, so many of those, because people treat you and I like Google or AI, and they want to be able to, sort of ask five people the same question, and the first one that answers them, they're grateful. But when we start to understand that there are things that must be neglected because leadership goes at the speed of disappointment.
Mhm.
Here's the thing is that as a leader, I will there's no way for me not to irritate someone. There's no way for me not to disappoint someone because they'll wish I had made a different decision.
Sure.
And so some of that understanding then comes to there's things that I can't or I won't put on my agenda, and neglecting those things, not because I'm looking to create damage and I'm not aiming for damage. I simply have to stay on the mission that God gave me. And part of that is to say to my career, look, this is as much as you get.
Mhm.
And in fact, I'm
Yeah.
looking for you to shrink so that I can get out of the rat race, see mailbox money coming in, have passive income. And the more that I have the ability to control my time, I can be more present in all areas of
Yeah.
life. So those are the three tools that I like to use to be in. If I'm feeling like I'm edging towards, or the RPMs are getting really high,
Yeah.
I need to go back to these three tools and evaluate, okay, get out your shears. There's things to be cut to push back those weeds that are invading my priorities.
So powerful, man. Those, yeah, gosh, like those things have been implemented. Had I implemented those a long time ago in those moments of being burnout, man, my life would be much different. But I love that you talk about that because I think so many people, especially men, we fail to reach out and ask for help when we're feeling that burned out. We fail to, we're like ashamed to go ask for help or surround ourselves with guys that are in the same situation. So important that we do that. One of the things that you do to help other people, though, is you actually have this awesome podcast called Leveraging Success Podcast. And if I did my research right, you've done over 50 episodes, which is awesome. But what has been the most surprising lesson that you've learned from your guests, and how has that impacted your perspective on leadership?
The people that I get to talk to, just like you, are people that are going for it and trying to arrange their lives for outcomes that would be incredible. They realize to whom much has been given, much is expected. And so every one of these people that I get to talk to are people that have arranged all of these assets and capabilities to say, at the end of my life, I want to not only receive a well done, I want to believe that at the judgment seat of Christ, that I'll be there, evaluated well, and not seen with a lot of red on my books, but a lot of plus signs that I'll be recognized and rewarded for. And so that mindset for them, tuning their lives towards that, it's just like what Paul described, is like, I'm going for this prize, and everything that I can do to attain it. I haven't attained it yet, but I'm going for it. This becomes their lives. And so I keep seeing people that will say no to what could be extravagant toys, or the consumption mentality that they could fall into, because these are wealthy people with a
Mhm.
lot of success. But instead of tuning all of that wealth to my consumption on this planet, it's to hold the belt and say, okay, this is all we're going to consume. And everything that God's given us above that is an opportunity to put that in play as a missional asset, to
Mm.
say that whether it's money or even extra bedrooms or an extra car, all of those things can be deployed for Christ. And if they're sitting there dormant, how can we get them moving forward? So when I get to talk to them and they start talking about those things, that's what always fascinates me, is how many people, when they catch this vision, will neglect their consumption for a future opportunity.
Wow. Yeah. I love podcasting, man. It's opened up the door for some of my best friends today are people that have been on my podcast that I've never actually met in person, right? Like I talk to them on a weekly basis and, it's opened up the doors for collaborations and partnerships. And for me, I actually look at podcasting as a legacy. Like I wish that I could go back 3, 4 generations deep and hear my great grandfather's voice and hear his story from him. And I
Yeah.
can't do it, but I can do that for future folks down my tribe, right? And so it gives me an opportunity to share my story, to connect with others, and really pass that along down the line. And my wife and I, we are celebrating 20 years of marriage next year.
Well done.
And as I was looking, and you and your wife just celebrated 29-year wedding anniversary this year. So cool. Like, what's your favorite thing about your wife? And for anyone that's newly married, like, what's that marriage tip that you would say, do this?
Wow. Well, first of all, Heather's an incredible woman and just godly in every description. I credit so much of what God's done in our marriage as a result of her faithfulness.
Mm,
Um, what would I say is the one thing? Just go back to Winston Churchill. Never, ever, 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 ever give up.
yeah.
There's so many reasons, even in Christian marriage, it doesn't matter if you know Christ or not, there's going to be a battle of wills, a decision that really needs to overlook all the things that you could be critical of, to say, these are the reasons why you're underdoing it or failing or not and you can have all the reasons why they're not adding up, but what love is to overlook that
Mm,
and to see past it and love them in spite of that, right? To be like Christ to your spouse. And so she's done that incredibly with me. And I would say she puts up with more of me than I do of her. But nonetheless, that whole never give up mentality. And I would say one of the special things about Heather, and many people recognize her for this, is that she's an incredible grace giver. She has an ability to forgive incredibly, just so quickly, not holding grudges and moving quickly forward and being in relationship without nurturing any sort of, hurt. And so some of this battle for me has always been about never giving up and then seeing past anything that would be imperfections and repositioning those as opportunities for love in spite of.
mm, yeah. So cool. That never ever give up. Man, that's one thing that my wife and I, we said I do, we meant it, and
Yeah.
we're breaking the chains of abuse, addiction, rejection, and divorce that have plagued generations. And down our lines, we both come from pretty crazy broken homes, and we just said we're not doing that. We're going to be the ones that are going to put a stop to that in this tribe, and it's been a fun journey. We've had those moments where it's like, all right, we're angry at each other. You go take a nap, I'll take a nap, right? Like you come back and we'll make up, right? So. Oh man, so good. I love that tip there. Now, as I was looking through your website and what you do, one of the things that caught my eyes is the Dream Master Ranch. Like, because this looks like an amazing dream property for me. Like, I have a cartoon on my wall here that's got an old guy standing on the porch that says, "If I can't pee off my front porch, my neighbors are too close." And I look at that and I go, "Man, that's what I want. I want that Dream Master Ranch." Like, what's this all about?
Yes, that. I love what you just said. So here was the deal. About 10 years ago, Heather and I went through this process called Dream Master. And God is the Dream Master. We believe that He gives dreams and He puts those dreams inside of us for His purpose. So, what dreams do I have on the inside, perhaps that I've had for decades, if not all the way back into my childhood. And what if I were to start believing that those weren't there just for fantasy, but really for me to start to nurture them to say, okay, God, why do I want to do this? And what's your purpose in it? And so when we went through the Dream Master process for the first time, uh, what we say is that I'm the balloon and Heather is the tether. She holds me down. So I'm the one with lots of dreams. I'm always coming up with ideas. And she's like, hang on, slow your roll, wait a second. And she helps me to balance those. And so the first time we went through this process, it was each of us accumulate dreams and let's talk about where God's in them. And so we each go to our separate places to start to say, okay, what's my dream for my family? What's my dream for my career? What do I just want to do for fun? What's my dream to do with God? And I start writing these things. And so for me, you asked me about dreams, I'm gonna be able to talk to you for hours. I'm just going, and I'm waiting for Heather to say, "Okay, I'm done with my part. Let's come back together." So this is 10 years ago. We're on a beach in Orange County at Pelican Hill, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm not getting any calls back. I'm not getting any text that says, okay, you can come back and we can meet. When she finally says it's time, I come back and she's in tears
Oh,
because she's like, I stopped dreaming. Once I had kids, I thought this was it. This was as much as I would ever dream. I've achieved that and I stopped it. And so as she started to get permission to dream again, and we started to talk, the first dream we ever had was to say, what if we were to own a property where we could host people so well, extravagantly, give them an experience with which they would feel like their soul was poured into, and then let them go through the same process where they would learn how to dream as a couple. Erik, the problem is that most people don't have any plan post career or post kids. And then crisis happens. And I wake up one day and she wakes up one day and she's looking at me like, who the heck are you? The kids are gone. The career is done or almost done. All we share is this bed and a bank account. And we've lost our relevance. We've lost our purpose. Well, if we were to take those dreams and say, God, why did you give them to me? How could we use them to honor you?
mhm.
This is the dream master process to say our marriage has a purpose past our kids and career. Not that those things are diminished, but there's a period piece to our kids and career. And eventually they leave our homes and eventually career may wind down. So, what will be the hallmark of our marriage? That's what we get to do at DM Ranch. When they come to be with us, we give them a weekend where we're sending them away with some instructions on some date nights.
Wow.
We workshop things and we help them to have God conversations around their dreams to build a process for dreams and help them to come out with one that they'll practically plan and then have a process for their marriage to say every date night, how do we bring out status on an existing dream and then maybe nurture new ideas together that keeps us involved and excited past these period pieces we have in our life.
Man, what a cool event and cool thing that you guys do for people. I know that, my kids aren't out of the house yet, and it's just one of those things that my wife and I have thought, like, what do we want to do afterwards? And
Yeah.
so it's so good to deep dive into that. What I'd like to finish the show with asking a fun question. I'm a
All
music
right.
guy, so like, what kind of music do you listen to, or do you have a favorite band that you like to listen to?
Oh, well, okay. So over the years, I have enjoyed lots of music. And these days, I like to have lots of house music on in the background with no words.
Okay.
I don't know what it is about that, but all sorts of house music in the back gives me some sort of beat that I can keep working to without, all of a sudden starting to sing to it.
Yeah.
But I have loved all sorts of country, jazz. But I'll tell you the confession of the band that I think I grew up with and probably seared the most into me was Def Leppard.
Okay.
And
Come on.
so in the 80s, I listened to Pyromania and Hysteria, and I got to a point where, especially my older daughters, they heard that in the background so much it made them love it, and so much so that a few years ago, I told my daughter, "Hey, I want to give you a best day. What would be your one thing to do with me? It was just me and you. Favorite thing to do? What would it be?" She's like, "Dad, we should go to a Def Leppard concert, right?" And so she's an adult now. She's already grown. She's married, and she wants to do that with me. And so we do that as a way to every year be making memories. Is that I offer to all of my kids, "Hey, 24 hours, me and you. What would be your favorite thing to do?" And we go to work that into a memory. But that's just one example of the music taste and love. I love a lot of music, but hard for me to say any band has been more impactful than them.
Gotcha. Come on, man. Man, I'm the same way when I'm trying to focus. I just have like house music. I actually listen to the Tron soundtrack,
Oh yeah.
and then similar sounds like that, where it's no lyrics, it's just like beats in the back, and it helps me just kind of flow. Even when I'm reading, I have to have that going. So it's so good. Man, Jeff, you're an absolute world changer, man. I love what you guys got going on. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak life into people that are listening to the show right now. It's impacting a lot of people. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.
Erik, a pleasure and an honor to be with you.
Hey, if you've ever thought about starting a podcast but unsure where to go, you need to go check out erikallenmedia.com. Click on the resources tab there. I will walk you through how to start, launch, and run a podcast. I've recorded over 500 interviews since 2017, and I want to help you launch your podcast. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you catch every show when I drop them. Thanks again. Keep changing the world.